Hello everyone and welcome to the Card Case Craft Kit workshop. In this video we'll be making the card case, which is for keys and small cards. We'll be talking through the process of putting this together, adding the hardware. You might have chosen a personalized message on yours and you will see that on the inside. So in your box you will have a QR code which would have led you to this video and this channel. Inside you will have all your tools. You will have pliers which we'll use to put the hardware in shortly. You will have your locks and split ring to add to your purse. You will have all the hardware you need, and these are Chicago screws to construct your purse together. And you'll also have a screwdriver, some cocktail sticks, and in this little tub you will find some glue, and I'll explain what we use that for later on. Underneath you will find your leather prepared and ready to craft with a logo on in matching colours. And if you opted for a personal message, it will be found here on your purse. So to begin with, what we need to do first is we need to add our hardware. So we have to add the locks when the purse is flat. One part will go here and one part will go here. So on this purse, what we are looking for is these two holes and also these two holes. So first we will do this part, which is the lock, which has a clip on one side which will lock into your purse later on. So if you open your bag with the hardware and all your locks, let's just empty that out there. The pieces we need for this front part are this piece, which is a clip, and also this small prong, which is quite sharp on one end, so be careful. So this hardware comes open for lots of different thicknesses of leather. So what we need to do is just squeeze it more closed to match the width of the leather. Once we've squeezed it closed, we can place it over the corresponding holes and you'll see they match up exactly. Then we will place our prong through this side. So we're working on the right side of the leather that has the colour on top. The other side is called a resin backed leather. So all the leather is finished on both sides, but one side will have the colour that you want to see on the outside of your purse. So we don't want to put our hardware on this way, because that would be on the back. So we want it to be on the right side of the leather with everything in place, and then we can turn it upside down. And we can lay it flat on the table. So what we will use now is our pliers. And you'll notice these pliers come open, so we want to use them closed. And we want to use this long part of the pliers, and we want to hold it at a right angle, right next to the prongs of that hardware, because we want to be pushing down and we want to fold over those prongs. we can do the same on the other side, and we fold. So we're folding both prongs inwards. Don't fold them outwards, because after a while your hardware will start to come loose. If you fold them over this way, that's going to make a very secure lock which will last a lifetime, and it's not going to come out. If you feel your lock is wiggling too much, it might move a little bit, but if you feel it is wiggling too much, you can try and press and fold again. Press and fold again. You can lightly tap with a hammer if you have one at home. But if you feel you need to do it again, because it sometimes takes a little bit of practice, you can just use your pliers to lift up the prongs using the sharper edge of the pliers. You can lift them up and you can start again. You do, when you're pushing down, need to push hard. And again, we're using the long edge of the pliers. We're not using the width of the pliers because we can't fold. So we're using that long edge and pushing downwards quite firm. And then I'm folding over at a right angle. So don't worry if you don't get it right first time. Don't worry if it wiggles a little bit. You just don't want it to be moving lots. So that's got a little bit of a wiggle on, not too much. That's nice and secure. So now the holes we need to focus on is these two on the opposite side. So this is where we would add this part. This is what the lock will slide into. Again, you'll notice two pronged spikes on one side. So what you need to do is pop them through those holes. This bar and this flat edge should be closer to this edge, and the round part should be pointing down towards the rest of the leather. So this is the right way up, not this way. So double check before you add this, and then what we can do is we can turn it over, and inside your craft kit you'll also have this back to secure your hardware. It will fit just over the two prongs, and you'll notice one side is more rounded and one side is more curved inside. So we want the nice rounded side to be on show because it's more smooth. This part is a little bit more difficult because you have a bar sticking out. We need to do the same thing. We need to fold these prongs over, but sometimes you might want to do that over the edge of a table so you can have the bar hanging over. To demonstrate for this video, I will just use this box. So I can just place the lock over this box with the bar just over the edge. Then I have a nice flat surface to fold over these prongs. Again, I'm using the long edge and I'm pushing down at a right angle and over and across. Just run your fingers over just to check those spikes are all the way down. And you can use your pliers just to flatten the edges over. So now that is our lock complete. The next stage is to start to construct our card case, and we will use these screws. These are called Chicago screws. They're a highly finished, good quality type of screw and rivet that we use in leather goods for high-end or designer details, and this is how you'll construct your purse with this stitch-free zero waste pattern. So the first holes that we need to start with are, and I'll pop in 2 screws, are this one and this one. So we'll just squeeze them in there. And if you imagine this is a box, so we can fold these sides over to give it a bit of shape. We can fold these little wings over to help us find the right shape. And also we can fold the bottom pieces over just to work the leather and give it some shape to help us make a start. You will also notice in your pack that you have this small sample pot, a screwdriver and some cocktail sticks. What I like to do, just to make sure that the screws never come out, is I like to add just a small dab of wood glue inside this part of the screw. I'm adding it to the inside of the screw, the one that has the nice finished side, because these are the screws that we want to see on the outside. The other screws that you have, you would want to see on the inside. So I'm also going to fold these little tabs over and up because they are actually going to slot inside later on. So looking at the right side of the leather, I've added a small dab of glue into this screw and into this screw here. You don't need too much. It's just going to permanently lock the screws and make it more secure. This is optional. You can always have a go without adding the glue to begin with if you just want to make sure you've got the process right. But now what I want to do is this screw corresponds with this hole here. So ignore this one for now. Just focus on this one and this one here. Ignore all the others because we'll come to those later. So I need to pull this screw over to this second hole along the edge. So there. So this is the first one that I want to attach. And it'll hold in place really well. You don't need to fully close the purse at this stage. We can just keep it quite open so we can see the screw on that side, and then we can by hand wind on the thread, and then we can tighten it up with our screwdriver. So you'll notice that little lip is inside. That will join to the hole on the base later on. So let's do the same on this side. So push the little tab in with the hole. So you want to move that out of the way, and we want to place it in the second hole. And then we can open it out pop in our screw. You can just wind it on by hand and use the screwdriver to tighten it up. Now we can move on to the second hole on this side and the second hole on that side. So the same process, we're putting the finished side of the screw in this part, and again the nice finished Chicago screw on the other side in this part. So we have our screws in this side, and you can pop one in the other side. Same again, we can just add a small amount of wood glue to the inside of the screw. We use wood glue instead of a traditional thread locking liquid because thread lock, if you get it on leather, it stains the leather instantly. If you use wood glue, you can wipe it off the leather straight away just with a cloth. It doesn't damage the leather. So we use wood glue instead of a thread lock just to make that process a bit more safe for you. So now we can start to slide over our pairs. You might need to lift the tabs up a little bit on the inside, and that will correspond with that hole. So we can do this side first. I'll just hold it together and I'll wind that screw on by hand to begin with, and then I can tighten them up later with the screwdriver when everything's in place. So again, I'm just moving that tab out of the way on the inside just so I can pivot over, pop the screw in, and I can wind that on by hand, and then I can tighten it up with my mini screwdriver later on. So I'll just tighten up all these parts inside, make sure everything's nice and secure. Now that I'm confident everything's in the right place, like so. Now, before we do the next ones, it would be best to do the screws underneath so we can still reach. You should notice they should line up really well, those holes, with the tabs on the inside. So we have those little tabs and those holes should line up with them, and you should be able to see through. If you don't, you just need to wiggle them slightly just to line them up to the holes and just pull them over to the corresponding hole. So again, I'm just going to add a bit of wood glue inside this screw. Pop one through there. And also pop one through the other side. And then I can reach in this gets a bit tricky because it's getting small, and I can pop one of my screws in there, and I can pop one in the other corresponding hole, using my finger to reach, and then I can use my mini screwdriver to tighten that up, just to make sure everything's really well connected and secure. Do the same on this side. And now we have our base screws in, we have our side screws. We just need to work on the last two on these sides, same process, popping in the finished side of the screw, adding some glue, winding the screw on by hand, tightening it up, then onto the other side, just the same as that side. So pop the screw in, add your little bit of glue. Don't worry if you put too much on, it'll just wipe off. Wind it on by hand, and tighten it up. So that's most of our purse done now. We just need to add our split ring and one more screw to this part here. You'll notice where the split ring sits in this little gap. So what you can do is just try and fold over, roll this piece of leather a little bit, just so we can fit our split ring on, which sits in this groove. Fold it over, and now we just have one more screw to attach that tab together. If you've lost a screw or it's bounced off the table, don't worry, we often put a few spares in every pack. So the last screw goes there. Add your last bit of wood glue, and then wind the screw on, and then we tighten it up with your little screwdriver, and then that is your purse complete. So all you need to do now is fold over the flap, and there you go. That's the craft kit for the card case purse. I often add my keys onto here. You can fold your keys inside and keep them inside this purse, or you can have them on the outside and keep some cards in there, or your staff pass for work. And if you had a personalized message, you will see that on there. If you just opted for a plain or no customization, it'll just be plain on the inside. So they're the two different options with personalization, and that's how you make your craft kit.